Before I get into my story, I would just like to thank you for helping me to make sure that my story sees the light of day. I know it's been more than a month in the making, and throughout that time, I've tried my best to accurately portray exactly what has happened to me over the past 10 years. I started out as a 55-year-old retiree, all the dreams in the world of being able to finally start to settle down. Time and time again, I hear it. Guys talking about not being able to be who they really are, be it through external pressures, forcing them down a particular path, or constraints placed on them by their financial position. Either way, I was no different. Yet I suppose what I did with my retirement could only be described as being complete insanity. If you were to call me the most stupid person the world has ever known, I don't think you'd be far off accurately describing what a complete buffoon I was. When I turned 55, I'd not once left America. I wouldn't say I was one of those people who would not be able to point out particular countries in the world. I wasn't that ignorant, but I was someone who believed that the world outside of America was backwards and strange. I've since learned that these opinions I held were nothing more than inaccurate delusions, based on years of being spoon-fed nationalistic nonsense. Don't get me wrong, America was, is, and always will be the best country to have ever existed, yet that doesn't mean there are no alternatives. It doesn't mean that just because you're from there, just because you love it as much as I do, that you have to remain. I can be a patriotic American and live in a different country, yet in my current state, I don't know if living in a different country is actually worth it anymore. What I'm trying to say is that as much as I love America, I was ready to retire, and I simply couldn't afford to retire there, so it only made sense to look for alternatives. The Philippines was always a country that interested me. You would watch a television show, one stands to mind even today, where they were following the exploits of an American who was travelling to the Philippines because he met someone from there online. I always found shows like this to be very derogatory, exploiting the ignorance that people like me had about that part of the world. I saw the guys who are featured in these programs as people who wanted nothing more than to seek a better life for themselves. It wasn't that they were seeking more money, status, or anything like that. They were seeking love and affection, and a partner who they could grow old together with. I always rooted for the guys featured in shows like that, even though they were more often than not looking and being displayed as being desperate, somehow misinformed individuals who had no business trying to find love somewhere else. It was as if they were being told, if you can't find love in America, you have no right to try and find love anywhere else. I never thought that was fair, and I was drawn to the Philippines because I thought I might have a chance to finally find the one thing that had eluded me throughout my life. A partner to finally settle down with and start a new chapter of my life. While I don't think there is anything wrong with these opinions that I held, I thought that because I was open to doing something different, that the people who I was going to involve myself with would also be going into the relationship thinking it was a positive way to improve their lives as well as mine. I had no idea it was their sole focus to improve their lives, even if that was at the detriment to mine, and that was the biggest mistake I made. I'm saying this because I think it's only fair to tell you the absolute truth. At 55 years old, I had never had a relationship in my life. It's not that I didn't try, it's not that I didn't want a relationship, I always wanted one, yet I never found myself in a position where this became a reality. I am very embarrassed to admit that, but it's only right that I tell you the truth, and perhaps you will understand that this might be one of the main reasons for me doing what I did. I was always and still am a very shy person. I'm extremely introverted. I'm not good around other people. It's not because I want to be like that, or because I'm trying to be awkward or different. It's because I was physically unable to force myself to do things that most other people seem to do as normal. But it was because of the way I was, and the lack of affection I had throughout my entire life, that the Philippines called out to me as being a place where I could completely become someone else, be who I always wanted to be, and cram into my life all the things that I'd missed out on ever since I left school. When I was 55 and retired, I had reasonable savings. Reasonable for me meant $400,000, and I had a small regular income of about $600, which was from an incident that happened to me earlier on in life that I was still being paid for. You will find out that this 600 is my lifeline. The 600 is what keeps me in this part of the world. But we'll get to that later. About 2 weeks after my 55th birthday, I flew to Manila for the first time. I was a bundle of nerves. Part of me was dreading what I would find when I was there. Maybe it wasn't like I thought it was going to be. All the dreams I had were just that, dreams. I'd never left America. I have to state that fact. I didn't know what the outside world was like. But what I did know was that in the Philippines, I had a chance of happiness. Happiness that I'd never been able to have at home. My first impression, getting to the Philippines, it was an overload on the senses. To say the Philippines is different to where I was from is stating the obvious. It's trying to get across just how different it actually is. This is very difficult to do when you're trying to describe it to someone who's never been. You can see pictures, watch videos, but that only gives you a very small part of the picture. You need to be there, on the ground, to actually understand what it's like. And all the apprehension I felt throughout the flight to get there, as soon as I stepped out of the airport into the chaos that was Manila, all of a sudden I felt like a different person. Even finding myself a taxi. I wasn't shy to walk around and ask people what to do. If I was at home, I wouldn't have been able to do that. Almost as if my personality shifted as soon as I arrived in the Philippines, and I was no longer the same person anymore. Within minutes of walking out of the airport and looking for a taxi, I was a different person. BGC was my destination. The research I'd done had told me that it was like Manila on a light version. The place where you would go when you're not quite yet ready to experience the chaos of the real Manila. Of course, all of Manila is real, but BGC doesn't really reflect what the rest of the country is like. But even still, when I was in my hotel and I went for my first walk around, I was in amazement about what I was witnessing. It's very hard to imagine, if you're listening to this, as someone who has never travelled a lot and experienced a lot of the world. It might be normal to you to go somewhere else. But this to me was like a wake-up call, I think. A wake-up call to tell me you might not have that many years left, and you need to make the most of them. You need to try and claw back all the things you missed out on because you're not the sort of person you are anymore. You seem like a new person in this new country. I spent a few days in BGC without going anywhere else. I was having a great time, but I did want to venture a little bit further. The place I read about where I wanted to go the most was in Makati, the famous nightlife area along P. Burgos Street that so many people went to get their Philippines fix. I was completely shocked when the taxi dropped me off at the foot of the street. I'd never seen anything like it. It was everything people had described it to be, and then some. I didn't know that there were certain connotations that went along with places like that. The girls that worked in the bars, I'd heard all the stories and tales about everything that had gone wrong for many people, and I thought I was going to think slightly differently because I'd never experienced anything even at home, so anything was better than nothing. At least that's what I felt. It's okay for some guy to say you shouldn't meet a girl in a bar. If this guy is comfortable meeting girls in other locations, yet for someone like me, who would never be able to meet a girl anywhere else, it was as if the bars were created for people like me, and I welcomed and cherished them because of that. I think it's unfair to say to a guy, don't meet a girl in a bar, especially when that guy feels like he has no other choice. So I would hope you would be a bit lenient on me now you know that's the case. You might be able to think of a particular time in your life or a particular event that happened to you where you found yourself shaking uncontrollably, shaking with excitement and also a little bit of fear of the unknown. Yet, as much as a part of you is telling you to go somewhere else, telling you to be careful and don't do anything stupid, there is a bigger part of you telling you to embrace everything that you're currently seeing and take advantage of it, because if you don't, you're going to regret it. This was how I was feeling when I was dropped off in the taxi. As soon as I was dropped off, I was approached by three incredibly beautiful girls. Beautiful is a very subjective term, I get that, but I was never approached by anyone in America, regardless if they were a 10 or a 0. I was never approached. But to me, these girls that were approaching me were all 10 out of 10s. The most stunning girls I'd ever seen, and they were all speaking to me. I knew what the situation was with the girls that were on the streets, and I did politely decline their advances. But the fact that they were approaching me made me let my guard down. I think I did let my guard down, and I decided to just pretend I was looking at myself from the outside, as if controlling myself to do things that I wouldn't have done otherwise. I might be getting too deep here, but if this helps another guy at some point, then it would be worth it. All this ridicule I'll get, bring it on. That was when I walked into a bar. The bar where I met a girl. It was just off P. Burgos Street, and my life would change completely because of it. I'm happy to describe what it was like, but I'm not going to give you the name of the bar, so you will have to have been there to know which one it is. But if you're walking down P. Burgos Street, as if you're walking further afield from the river that runs not too far away, I can't remember what the river's called, but if you picture that river and walk away from the river down P. Burgos Street in that direction and continue down there, turn left and it's one of the bars there. This was my first bar experience. I'd never been in a bar like this before, and you walk in through some curtains and then immediately to the left there was a pool table. To the right there were couch-style seats and a few tables, and then there was a bit of a stage in the middle and different sorts of tables, more like booths on the other side, and the bar was right at the end. I walked in and I tried my level best to stop shaking uncontrollably. I'd never seen anything like this before. And then, when you take a seat and order a drink and a girl comes and sits next to you and introduces herself and shakes your hand, you could say that that was enough to send a guy like me over the edge. It was so great that they could speak English. We could have proper conversations, and although it was only my plan to have one beer and have a bit of a look and then go somewhere else, I had more than one beer and I bought more than one drink for the girl. And then she just stayed with me. It wasn't as if money was an issue. I was retired and I had a decent amount of money, I thought. So I just, opened up saying yes to everything the girl asked me. I'd never done that before, and I would recommend doing something where you find yourself somewhere and just say yes to everything, but maybe not in a place like that. The biggest problem for me, though, was I thought the girls that were working in the bars were doing so, of course, to make money, but I thought that their ultimate goal was to be able to meet someone who could take them out of the bar and maybe start a family and start a life with their new husband. That's what I thought the bars were for. A place to meet people. A place to meet people for people like me who struggled my entire life to meet anybody in any other place. I thought that that's what these places were for guys who struggled and didn't know how to do things any other way. So, when the next morning I woke up at my hotel in BGC and she's making a coffee, I thought I needed to take advantage of the situation and spend more time with her. I thought that, because I was in the bar, I thought she had chosen me as well. Another time, I wasn't aware that this wasn't correct. And you can call me naive, I don't mind that. I'm just telling you the truth about what I thought. And when I saw her there making the coffee, I asked her if she'd like to stay with me for a bit longer. That was arranged, and she stayed with me for a whole week, taking me to lots of places in Manila that I would never have been brave enough to go to by myself. I learned a lot about her family in Leyte, where she was from, her children. They were living with her parents because her ex had left her with nothing, and how she was working where she was to be able to support the family. but she did say she was hoping to be able to meet someone and settle down. When she said that she was looking for that, it got my attention, because that's what I was looking for as well. And it also probably didn't help that I thought this girl was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen. If you add everything together, I suppose I was the perfect mark for a girl like that. Yet, at the time, I was not aware of that. I immediately asked her to stop working in the bar and become my girlfriend. I was very happy to be able to support her financially, because in return, I thought I was getting love and a genuine relationship, which is what I had always wanted. I was happy to play the traditional role, and if that meant I had to give her money, so be it. That is always how things have been throughout time. It's only been not like that for a few years, and things have changed a lot. I think it's because things have changed so much that people like me had such a difficult time back at home. But that is what it was, and I'd already fallen in love with this girl. She was 23, and because it was something going on in my head that I wasn't aware of, but I actually thought that she would have been the person I would spend the rest of my life with. I'd already made my mind up of that fact after she'd only stayed with me for a week, that she was everything I'd always wanted. I didn't want anything else. She was happy that I was able to support her, and we spent another 2 weeks getting to know each other a little bit better. And as I'm saying, I'm just falling more and more in love with her every day. I think the saddest thing is that I didn't even know what I was doing was wrong. I didn't even know what I was doing was stupid. I thought that I'd gone to a place where you go to look for somebody, where you go to look for the sort of person who is not comfortable to do something somewhere else. I also thought she wasn't the sort of person who was able to find someone in the traditional way as well. So in that sense, I thought we were made for each other, and that's why things moved so quickly. You might be picturing a ruthless girl who was displaying all the signs of someone who was only interested in extracting as much money as possible out of a willing mark. You might be picturing a devious individual whose sole purpose was to destroy the lives of foreigners. Yet that's not what she looked like. As I said already, she was incredibly beautiful. She was so sweet. She never raised her voice. She always smiled. She always acted exactly like you would think a nice person would act. Was she a wolf in sheep's clothing? I've heard of girls similar to her being described in a way like that. Yet at the time, I wouldn't have said that. And even after things went so wrong, I still wouldn't believe what she did. Because I actually thought to start with, things were my fault. So I will get to that. After another 2 weeks in BGC together, I needed to get more time in the country. The 30 days was coming to an end that I'd been given when I arrived, so I went to sort that out, and I started looking into other visa options. I understood that there was one if you were married to someone from the Philippines. That would give me a permanent visa, so that was something I was thinking about. I thought I'd already found someone that I would spend the rest of my life with, and the thought of marrying her was high on the cards. But after I had those extra days, I asked her if there was anywhere in the Philippines that she would like to go. She can choose exactly where she wants to, as long as we're going together, and I will pay for the whole thing. She said she'd always wanted to go to Boracay. Apparently, it was a beautiful island a short flight away from Manila. That was good with me, so we flew there 2 days after. We actually had to fly to a neighbouring island and then got a boat across, but it was only a short boat ride. And she was right. What an incredible place. She said she'd always wanted to go and had never been. I thought that was incredible, given the fact that it was so close to where she lived and worked. I don't think I yet understood just how much poorer certain people can be in the world compared to where I came from. We only planned to stay 3 days, and on the 3rd day, I was the happiest I'd ever been. I know people say that all the time, but I genuinely was the happiest I'd ever been. I was in an amazingly beautiful place, with the girl of my dreams, and I thought it was the start of something amazing, and I asked her if she would like to get married. She said she would love to get married, but she said it might be better if we spent a little bit more time together first, if we got to know each other better before we committed to marriage, and that sounded okay to me. What I did tell her was that I wanted to get married to her. I was happy to wait until she was ready, but that didn't mean that I wanted her to look for somebody else. As far as I was concerned, we were boyfriend and girlfriend and would remain that way until we were married, and she said she was fine with that. We spent an extra 4 days there, and that was the best week I've ever lived. It's amazing just how different life can be. I thought that I would always feel that way with her. I thought that she felt for me, and what she felt was real. And yes, that might be lots of people saying she was 23 and you were 55. But there was never any talk that that was a problem. She never mentioned that she had a problem with the age difference. In fact, she said she preferred people who were older because they were more mature and had more experiences in life, and she felt that was better for her and her future. On the last day in Boracay, she said she would love to take me to meet her family in Leyte. She wanted to see if they liked me, and if they did, then she could get married to me. When she brought this up, I was ecstatic. The very fact that she wanted to take me to where she was from, to meet the people that were her family, to me that meant she trusted me enough to know that I was serious with her and that I wanted to spend my life with her. I did tell her on more than one occasion how much I loved her and I wanted to be with her, and I always asked her if there's anything that you need from me, all you need to do is ask. With that in mind, we returned to Manila, and for whatever reason, she said we needed to go on the bus and on a boat to get there. Don't do that if you're in the Philippines. It took over a day travelling from Manila to get there, when we could have flown very quickly, but she just said that's how she'd always done it and how she was comfortable, so I went along with it. I mean, I will tell you how pathetic I was in that case. The fact that I was sitting next to her on the bus, that was good enough for me to sit on it for such a long time. The fact that she was with me on the ferry, that was good enough for me. The huge discomfort, inconvenience, heat, and everything else that goes along with it, that didn't matter because I was with her and that's all I wanted. When we eventually got there, I was worn out. We stayed in a hotel for a few days just so I could get back to my old self. I don't envy people from the Philippines who are forced to travel on buses and public transport to get around the country. Flying is so incredibly cheap as it is. To think that people can't afford $50 for a flight. At the time, I was not even thinking that was a real thing. I think that's where I made the biggest errors. Thinking that she would choose to go on the bus and ferry to get somewhere because she didn't want to fly, because it was a choice, not because it was cheaper. But after 2 days, I was feeling a lot better, and I was ready to go and meet the family. That's when she told me that where she came from was over 2 hours away, a 2-hour drive, and we didn't have our own transport, so we had to find someone to drive for us. It wasn't expensive, about the same price as getting a taxi for 5 miles at home, yet you could go 20 times further in the Philippines for the same price. I was not used to seeing what I was seeing as we drove to see her family. The conditions that people were living in were like nothing I'd ever seen before, and that's when I started to feel sorry for the people. If only I'd have looked at these conditions and then looked to my girlfriend to my side, who I thought was the love of my life, and who I thought was falling in love with me. Then I should have looked back and forth between the two and thought, hang on, is this because she wants to escape these conditions? That's why she's putting up with me? As I've already stated in this story, it's been a long time in the making, just trying to get it perfect because it doesn't end in the Philippines. It's got multiple aspects to it, and I did so many things without understanding that the people I was doing them with were doing them because it was a way for them to escape just how difficult their lives were. I had no idea at the time, and I'm happy to be called naive because of that. When we pulled up to her house, I said something that I regret. Even after everything that happened, I still regret what I said. But at the time, I didn't even know what I was saying was wrong. I thought what I was saying was right because that's how I felt. But when we pulled up to the house, I said to her, "What kind of animals do your parents keep here?" I honestly thought it was a place where they kept farm animals. Hand on heart, I thought perhaps they kept pigs or cows there overnight. When she told me that that was actually her parents' house, my heart sank, and I said I was so sorry, I had no idea. I really didn't mean it, but I think she knew that I was so inexperienced and so unaware of how different people lived in different parts of the world that I think she just let it slide. But deep down, I think she really resented me because of that. If I could take it back, even now, after everything had happened, I would. I can't imagine how it must have felt like for her to have this guy who was with her asking what animals her parents kept in the house that she had grown up in. I hate myself for that even today, so perhaps in a way what happened to me is karma. Yet I think that may be going a bit too far. But after I had apologised to her for making that mistake, we got out of the car and her parents came and greeted us. I have nothing bad to say about them. They were very friendly. They offered me food, even though it was quite apparent that they didn't really have any money to buy food for themselves, let alone give any to me. But they were open to sharing it, and they pointed to where we were able to spend the night. Her mother and father and 6 of her younger siblings, as well as her 2 kids, lived there, and they all slept outside that night so that I could sleep in the house. They were very kind, yet I think looking back now, it was all just part of the game in order to try to improve their situation, even if it meant using their daughter to do that. But I didn't think I was using them. I thought I was giving all my love, all this love that I had bottled up inside me throughout the whole of my life. I thought I was giving all that to this girl that I'd fallen in love with. And in return, I wanted to make sure that she was happy, and if that meant I had to make her family happy as well, then I would happily do that. We spent a few days there, and as much as it was difficult for me to stay in such conditions, I felt a bigger connection to the girl I'd fallen in love with, and I felt all I wanted to do was save her and her family from the current situation they had. Before you start shouting at the screen saying, "Here we go again, another saviour," I didn't know that was a thing. It made logical sense to me to think that I could get married to this girl, look after her and her family, and be respected and loved because of it. I asked her again to marry me when we were there, and she said when the time was right. But first things first, if you are truly happy with me and you're okay with my family, even though you think they live in a house where animals should live, I think we need to spend more time together. I hated when she said that. It wasn't that I thought her family were like that at all. That wasn't what I thought. I just saw the building and thought that's what it was. How was I to know? I'd never left my own country, and I'd never seen anything like that. But when she said that, instead of thinking perhaps she actually really hates me and is hoping to get as much out of me as she can, I thought it was my job to prove to her that it was a mistake and an accident, and I didn't mean it. I mean, I had no chance, especially guys like me. But when she said that, I told her I was sorry and I didn't mean it. But I did say I want to spend the rest of my life with you, and I hope you can forgive me. I can remember her sighing, a really big sigh, and she said, "Let's go and get something to eat and have some drinks. There's a place not too far away right on the beach. Let's go and sit down." I was really happy that she was comfortable enough to allow me to see where she came from. It was such a beautiful place, and we walked for 5 minutes, and all of a sudden we see the ocean. Crystal clear waters, white sands, and nobody in sight. There were a few people there, but it wasn't like a big tourist place. And there was a very small bar/restaurant. It was 100% local style, no tourists in sight. You go inside, we had a few drinks. It was warm, the beer. The fridge wasn't working, but I didn't mind. It was an interesting experience to be able to see this. We ordered some food as well, and that's when she started saying that you can see where I'm from. I love where I'm from, and I would love to live here. But at the moment, I have to work because I need money. I need to be able to help my family. Then I said to her, "I've been helping you. I'll happy to help you instead so you don't need to work anymore, and I'm happy to continue with this." I was trying to tell her that as long as she stayed with me, she'd be okay. And then she said, "I don't know if things will work between us because I want to live here and you want to live in Manila." I didn't know she was playing me. I didn't know. "Who said I wanted to stay in Manila?" I said. "Well, that's where you were, and I only asked you to come here, and you only came because I asked." "I love it here," I told her. "This is a great place. I've never been somewhere as beautiful for this, and you're a great girl. I'm happy to be here, and I'd love to live here, and I want to marry you." "They don't really have places to rent that you will be able to live in," she said. "That's the problem." That's why it's taking me such a long time, because I need to save money to be able to build a house here. I want to be able to live here close to my family, and I want my family or my children to live with me. Would you be okay with doing that with me? I asked. I'd never had a family before, and it's something I'd always wanted. And she said, "How do I know if you're serious or not? I can't just stop my job permanently and change my life completely, only to find out that you're not serious and you're just lying just so you can have a good time with me before you go back home." I hated that she said things like that. I had no idea that she felt like that. At the time, I believed that what she was saying was true, and that's what she was thinking. And I just said no. I've waited 55 years to be able to leave where I came from and to start a real relationship, and you're the first person I've ever met and fallen in love with, and I want to spend my life with you. Okay, then, she said, let's go back to Manila for a bit and spend a few weeks there, and we'll see how we feel then. That caught me off guard. I was expecting her to say something else, but that reinforced my feelings that she didn't want to rush into a more committed relationship until she was sure that I was serious about her. But I was. So when she said that, I was actually a little bit upset because I thought she still wasn't sure about me. But all I could really say was, let's go. Back in Manila, this time we stayed at a hotel in Makati. I was more comfortable to be able to stay somewhere like that as opposed to BGC. After visiting Leyte, everything felt fantastic and modern and new now as opposed to how things were there. But she stayed with me all the time. She never went back to the bar or went to meet anybody else. She was always with me. But we went out together in the evenings for food and drinks, and I was just happy. That's all I wanted. Happy and hoping that because I'd already committed to her, she would commit to me as well. She didn't talk about anything for the first week. I kept asking her, I really want to know what you want to do. I told her how happy I was and I wanted to stay with her, but I really need to know if that's what you want. She just kept saying that she really liked me. She felt like she loved me, but she wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to leave, and then she'd have to start all over. I kept telling her that that would never happen. I kept telling her I wanted to marry her, and to me that was proof enough that I was serious. And then a few days later, when I was talking about it, we were out having something to eat, and I just said, have you got any ideas? And then she said, what about if we go and live close to where I'm from and we build our own house there? She said that way I'd be able to make sure the house was comfortable enough for me to live in, and she could be where she wanted to be. Would that be okay with me? She said. Does that mean you want to marry me? I asked. Yes, I want to marry you, she said. Of course I do, because I love you. But I think it would be best if we built the house first, and then you can test out living there, and if you like it, we can get married. As I'm writing this now, I am trying to tell my old self I'm being played, but I didn't think I was at the time. Even after everything that had happened, I still didn't think I was, so let that sink in. But I did ask her how much it would cost to build a house. She said we could get some land and build a house for around $75,000. She said it might be best if we just give the money to her and her family and they can start the construction while we're living in Manila. That's a lot of money, I told her. But then she said, I don't know what you want me to say. I love you, but I cannot just live like this for the rest of my life. What happens when you get old and I need to look after you? How can I look after you when we don't have anywhere to live and I don't have anything to help you with? When she said that, I couldn't help but think that what she was saying was actually true. I was 55, which was 32 years older than her. So in 20 years' time, I might be too old to look after myself, and I might need to rely on her and her family to help. So what she was saying did make sense to me. I wouldn't want the person I loved more than anything to struggle if something happened to me. So after thinking about it, I thought it sounded like a good idea, so let's do it. I did say I would prefer to be there when the house was being built. That was my conditions. I want to be there and watch the construction, so I hope you're okay with that. When she said she was, I agreed, and I basically gave her $75,000 to build a house and buy some land. Over the course of the next 5 to 6 months, that's what we did. I'm falling in love with her more and more every single day. I think she's falling in love with me more and more every single day. We found some land which was perfect. We started building a house. It wasn't big, it was just what we needed to have a basic life. 2 bedrooms, a small living room, and a kitchen. That was it. But it was $75,000 for everything. It may have been the case that it was actually less than that, and it was just $75,000 because that's the figure she'd started with, and she was the one that dealt with all the people doing the construction. When the construction was taking place, we were travelling to and from the closest hotel, which wasn't that close, but I was happy with it, and I said as soon as the house was built and we moved there and married, I would buy a car. Everything went downhill very quickly from there, incredibly so that I didn't even know what had happened. When the house was about 90% complete, I wasn't yet comfortable to live in it, but she said she was happy to stay there even though it wasn't quite finished. So I didn't mind if that's what she wanted to do. I would stay in the hotel, she could keep track on the progress, and I would go back every day. The first time she stayed there, the day after, when I came back, she was inside the house and a Filipino guy about her age was there with her. "What's going on?" I said. "Nothing," she said. "Don't worry about it." I just said, "Okay, fine. Hope everything's good," and I got on with things. It was as if I was oblivious to what was going on. Or I knew what was going on, but I just didn't want to think about it. Then it happened again the next day. It's as if she's trying to say, "I'm cheating on you here, I think you need to leave." But I didn't see it. The next day she made it even more obvious. When I walked in and saw it, I'm just thinking to myself, "What are you doing? What's happened?" "Oh, sorry, I got drunk last night and I had a bit of an accident. Don't worry about it, it won't happen again," she said. She said it just like that. Then it twigged that she had actually cheated on me. I saw her with the same guy 2 times before, but I didn't see her in any compromising positions, so I just thought that it was an innocent thing. Yet now I knew that she cheated on me, and of course I was devastated. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I wanted you to stay with me in the house, and I got a little bit drunk, and this happened." Even when she said that, I said, "It's okay, don't worry about it. I still love you, everything's fine. Just please don't do it again." "I will stay in the house now," I said, and she looked at me like, "Okay, that's fine," and we just got on with things. A few days later, when it was quite apparent to her that I was just some kind of complete idiot who was so desperate to have someone in his life that he was prepared to overlook anything, she'd actually said to me, "I think I've made a mistake. I don't really love you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that we've built this house, but I don't love you anymore." Then she did something that was stranger than anything else. She said, "We still have about $15,000 left and I will give this back to you, but I feel so bad, I didn't mean for this to happen. But when you were staying in the hotel and I was alone here, I got a little bit drunk and the person that you saw me with was the father of my children." That hit me like a bombshell. I looked at her and pleaded with her, "Please don't tell me this is true." I told her how much I loved her, how much I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her, and how she was my world. She just said she was so sorry she didn't mean it. But when she saw him, she remembered how much she liked him, and she thinks it's better for her, him, and her children if they stayed together. And she said she would give me this $15,000 back because it's only right. I was heartbroken when she said this. Yet I have to be perfectly clear that I thought everything she was saying in that moment, everything that she'd done up until that point, I thought that these were new feelings she was having with regards to her ex, and she hadn't scammed me. I thought she'd just made a mistake spending time with me and she regretted it, and she wanted to give me some money back to say sorry. I didn't even look at the fact that I was $60,000 less. I'd lost $60,000 by this happening. I just broke down in tears because the thought of losing her meant I wasn't even thinking about the money. Talk about desperation, but that was me. I was a desperate fool who wanted nothing more than to be able to stay with somebody in a relationship that was real. But I remember looking at her with tears in my eyes just saying, "Is there anything I can do to make you change your mind?" And she started crying as well, saying she's really sorry, but she never thought this would happen. I begged her. I'm embarrassed to admit, but I begged her for hours, "Please change your mind. We can have a great life together always. I'll always look after you." But she then kept saying that she was sorry, it was a mistake. What was I going to do? I didn't know. And then she gave me back the $15,000. I thought at the time that what she meant and what she was saying was that she was actually sorry about what had happened. I thought it meant that she really did love me to some degree, but she thought it would be better for her and her ex and kids if they got back together, and I was just collateral damage. The last thing she said to me was, "I love you so much, but unfortunately it's not going to work out." She also said that I will be able to find someone else and have a good life with them. I had no choice but to return to Manila. I was completely devastated, and I have to be perfectly clear that I was not even thinking about the fact that I just lost $60,000. All I was thinking about was the fact that I lost her. I felt bad that I lost her, and I also felt bad for her that she lost me, but she had to put her kids first. That was how I saw it. That was how I felt when I returned to Manila, where I went to find a hotel in Makati, and I went for a beer the next morning. I didn't even know at the time what had actually happened to me, and I wouldn't even know that what she had done was play me and scam me out of money. I thought it was just a real relationship that had broken down because she chose to do what was best for her kids, even though she wanted to stay with me. That just goes to show how desperate I was, and how well she played me. Yet far worse things happened to me not long after, that finally opened my mind to just how far people will go to try to remove you from your hard-earned money. The worst that happened to me in Thailand, and that comes next. I was sitting in a bar in Makati in the Philippines. I just started to feel comfortable in that part of the city. I was spending most of my time in BGC, a relationship that I thought was going to see me out until the end of my days had come crashing down only the day before. I'd returned from Leyte, where I'd spent money to build a house, only to have the girl that I loved turn round to me and say she thinks it would be best if she got back together with her ex for the sake of her kids. I was a guy who had no luck throughout the entirety of his life with girls. I mean, zero luck. And my Filipina girlfriend was my first girlfriend, and I really hoped she would be the last. At the time, I didn't know that she scammed me. I thought she'd made the difficult decision to do what was best for her kids, even if that meant she wasn't able to stay with me, somebody she said she loved. I was out of pocket $60,000. I originally agreed to pay $75,000 to build the house and buy the land in Leyte, where she was from. But when everything came to a head, she agreed to give me back $15,000, as if to say, "I'm sorry, but here's a bit of your money back." It would take me an even worse relationship in Thailand and an even more deceitful person to take even more money from me for me to finally understand what things were actually like. And while I was sitting in that bar, nursing an ice-cold San Miguel Light, I wasn't devastated at the fact I was $60,000 poorer. I was devastated by the fact that this girl that I loved more than anything was no longer going to be in my life, and that's all I was thinking about. Looking up and watching the activity around me, people getting on with their everyday lives and turning around ever so often to take a glimpse at the Filipina girls with the green uniforms and little berets on, made me realize that as great as the Philippines is, it doesn't mean that it's going to be great for everyone. It hadn't been great for me. My relationship had broken down so badly, so quickly, I didn't even know what to do anymore. I can't have been in the Philippines for more than 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, but I started to feel like perhaps I should go somewhere else, even though I didn't know where to go. The Philippines was the first country that I ever visited out of America. I was 55 when I first left America, and my Filipina girlfriend was the first girlfriend that I had ever had. And I will say it again, I thought she was going to be my last. But in that moment, I knew I needed to try something different. Over the course of an hour, a strange twist of events would send me to Thailand, which I actually found to be better for somebody like me. As I said at the start of my Philippines story, I really appreciate the help you have given me for me to be able to get my story told. I think my level of naivety goes far beyond the level expressed by other guys who lost their money. It has been very difficult to get this down in a way where you're able to read it out, And while I'm fully aware that many people are going to look at the things I've done and not feel sorry for me and not have any sympathy for me, feel like I'm just another idiot, that's not why I'm telling this story. I'm telling this story because while there are people like me in the world, there are more than you think. There are guys who will do things that most of the people wouldn't do because of desperation. Desperation makes people do crazy things, and I do need to thank you for giving me the ability to share my story, even if it means 99 out of 100 people are going to hate me and think I'm stupid. If it can help one person, then it will have all been worth it. While I was sitting in that bar, I noticed out of the corner of my eye another guy sitting by himself, just reading a book with a beer. I didn't think anything of it, and I just ordered another beer for myself, and then another one, and another after that, and I am starting to get a little bit drunk, and I got up to use the restroom. I accidentally bumped into that guy. I said sorry, and he said don't worry about it, and then when I got back from the restroom, I think he was drunk, he came to sit down on the table where I was sitting. I was looking out into the street. He was looking into the bar/restaurant. I think you probably know which one I'm talking about. If you don't, think Cuba. I was already slightly drunk. I was never a big drinker in my life. I suppose I drank the most I'd ever drunk in the Philippines, going out with my ex-girlfriend, doing things like that. It was as if drinking there was part of the experience. So although I only had maybe 4 or 5 beers, I was feeling the effects. But this guy sits down and says, "All good? You look in a deep state of thought." I can't remember what he said really, but something like that. The guy was from England, and he was probably more drunk than I was. One thing I found throughout the short amount of time I'd been in the Philippines, you would often meet people from time to time who were so extroverted, as opposed to introverted like me, that it helped you open up in a way that I was never able to do at home. Although I was very uncomfortable and thought, "What are you doing?" I just sort of said, "Yeah, unfortunately, my girlfriend broke up with me and I don't know what to do." I didn't talk about the money or the house or anything I'd done. I just said I didn't understand what had happened and I hoped to be with her forever. I told him I'd only been there for 6 months, but because my relationship had broken down, I didn't know what to do. I should have told him, perhaps, that I'd lost money, and I bet he would have said you were scammed. But I didn't. He just said he was only in the Philippines for a few weeks, but he actually lived in Thailand, and that piqued my interest. "Thailand," I said. "I've heard of it, but I'd never been." I told him that the Philippines was the first place I ever visited out of America. You could tell that he wanted to say something smart, but he didn't. Then he just said you have to go to Thailand for a look. If you don't have a relationship anymore, it's not going to cost you anything apart from a cheap flight. Have a look at Thailand, you might like it there. I had no plans to ever visit Thailand, but then he started talking about if I liked what I saw on P. Burgos Street, I would most definitely like the town of Pattaya. He asked me if I'd been to Angeles City, which I hadn't, and then he said, well, if you had been, think that times 1,000. And if anything, Thailand is cleaner, safer, and the food's better. If you don't like it, you can always come back. I wish I got his name and contact information, because not long after that, he stumbled off back to his chair and continued with his book and ordered another drink. He was on the red horse, and I could tell he was drunk. But when it was my time to leave, I acknowledged him and said, "Hope you're well," and I left back to my hotel, unable to shift the thoughts of Thailand that I was having. Lots of this will only make sense if you heard my story from the Philippines, but I don't want to repeat anything I've said there, so go and have a listen to that as well. But all I was thinking about at that moment was my girlfriend, or my ex-girlfriend, and how much I wished I was still with her. As I stated in that story, I met her not far away from the bar I was in. It was another bar just off P. Burgos Street where she worked. I didn't think to go in another bar and try and meet someone else. I still didn't understand that places like that were not necessarily the best places to meet people. I was under the spell of my ex-girlfriend, and the fact that I'd lost $60,000 to her wasn't even the thing I was upset about. It was the fact I wasn't with her anymore. The $60,000 I thought was an honest mistake from her, and that's how desperate I was. I went to bed that evening after doing a bit of Googling about Thailand. I'd never even considered going to Thailand. Every time I watched something and if something came on about Thailand, I just turned to a different channel. The Philippines was the only place I was ever interested in. But over the course of the next few days, after still feeling so upset and down that my girlfriend broke up with me, I thought it's only $250 for a flight. I might as well go and have a look, and I can always return to the Philippines if needs be. So that's what I did. I flew to Thailand, Manila to Bangkok. And when I got out of the airport there, it felt quite similar to how it felt in Manila. Yet when you're driving to your hotel, that's when the differences become so apparent. My first impressions of Thailand versus the Philippines was that Thailand appeared to be a lot more modern. The roads were better, they had better public transport, the food was a lot better and cheaper, and even in Bangkok, everything that excited me about P. Burgos Street in Manila, again, a place I still thought was a place where you were meant to meet people who wanted a relationship that couldn't find one any other way, that's when I started to understand that Bangkok felt like Manila on steroids. Yet, they'd already taken steroids and forgot about it and taken them again. That was the only way I could describe Bangkok compared to Manila. What that guy spoke to me about, who met me in the bar, he wasn't lying. Thailand, for the most part, was better than the Philippines, in more ways than one. And it was when I checked into my hotel and gone for a walk around that all the thoughts about my ex-girlfriend had disappeared. I thought I was in for a lot better chance to find somebody in Thailand as opposed to the Philippines. There seemed to be so many more girls interested in meeting someone like me. And to top it off, when I was walking around Bangkok, I felt 100% safe at all times. Yet I never really felt that way in Manila, aside from in BGC. I stayed on Soi 4 in a hotel there, and I thought that if I stayed there for a few weeks, the chance of me meeting someone was immense. This was Bangkok, and the guy that was speaking to me was saying Pattaya was the place to go. How much better must that be if I thought what Bangkok was giving me was great? If you listen to what happened to me in the Philippines, you'll remember that I fell in love with the first girl that I met in one of the bars, because I thought that she fell in love with me, and I thought that we were both there for the same reason, which was to meet somebody. Yet I wanted to take my time in Thailand to make sure I found the right girl. This was at the start of 2016 or a little bit later, and I went on my first day to some of the bars on the street where I was staying. Automatically, I felt like I didn't even know why I went to the Philippines to start with. I went to the Philippines, I guess, because that's what I knew about. That's what I looked into. I'd never looked into Thailand, but I wish I had, because this just seemed to be the perfect place to be able to meet a real girl who wanted someone like me. I spent 2 days there. I actually had real conversations with some of the girls there, and I thought it was going to be no problem for me to find someone quite soon. But based on what that guy had told me, I did think I needed to go to Pattaya, which I did, and I found it was even better. I know I've said this lots of times, but you have to understand that up until I was 55, I'd always been single. I'd always dreamed of having a long-term, meaningful relationship with someone, yet I was never fortunate enough to be in that position. That's why I did what I did in the Philippines, and why even after losing money, I still cared more about the fact I lost her as opposed to the money, because I didn't even realize that she'd scammed me. It would be after I was scammed in Thailand, to a much bigger degree, and after having some conversations with people who started to tell me what things were actually like, it would be then that I realized what had happened. When I was in Pattaya, I'd already had time to develop some feelings about Thailand as opposed to the Philippines. I felt like Thailand was better in every way. Apart from the Philippines, they spoke English a lot better, which made it more easy to have communication skills with the girls who only spoke basic English in Thailand. I had to change the way I spoke in order to be understood by people, which took some getting used to. But part of me found this was quite sweet and exciting because here were two people, at least I thought, more like one person and somebody else who was there trying to make some money, yet I was there for a serious relationship. It was sweet that we didn't speak each other's languages and we had to communicate in other ways through basic language in order to be able to get points across. Of course, most of the girls understood basic English to a level where you could get by, yet you couldn't have in-depth conversations about anything really. But I didn't think I was actually looking for someone to have conversations with. I was looking for someone to love, who in turn would love me, and who in turn would spend the rest of their life with me. I'm more likely to spend the rest of my life with them because I was 56 and the girls I was speaking to were usually younger than 30. How was I to know that these girls who were showing interest in me, who were perhaps 27 or 28, weren't showing interest for genuine reasons? I thought that while they did what they did to help support their families and themselves, their main dream was to settle down and start living a more dignified life. I looked at the guys going and seeing a girl and then going to see another girl as people who didn't respect them to the level I thought they needed respecting. I respected the girls, and I wasn't going to do anything with anyone unless I thought it was going to lead to something more serious in the future. I thought the fact that I was older than them was just one of the quirks of Thailand, and the Philippines for that matter. If there were girls that were older than this, I would have probably talked to them, but they weren't. It was as if all the girls who were perhaps in their 40s or a bit older, they'd already been working there and already met someone. So it was as if the girls who were there because it was their desire to have someone like me. When I write this, I am aware how crazy this sounds. I don't think like this anymore. I had a huge change of perspective, but at the time this is exactly how I felt. So on my 4th day in Pattaya, when this amazing girl starts talking to me in a bar not too far away from the beach, and she's showing interest in me, that's all I really needed to see. I had been in a few bars before this and spoken to girls, but it was more of a generic conversation, more of a going along with the motions. Yet this girl appeared to be really interested to get to know me. If anything, she was even more beautiful than my girlfriend that I had in the Philippines, and she was really fun to talk to, even though her English wasn't perfect. I told her about the fact it was my first time in Thailand. I'd only been there for a few days, how I used to live in the Philippines, and I'd just come out of a relationship with a girl who I loved so much. I told her how before that relationship fell apart, it was my plan to live with her, and the place where she was from, and we even built a house there. Yet everything seemed to come crashing down because she had to put her kids first, which meant going back to stay with her ex. I told her how much this devastated me and how I hoped to find someone again soon. And the way she listened to what I had to say and reacted when I said certain things, in a way that I hoped she would react, as if she was sorry for me and wanted to know more. I felt like she was a real and honest person. I did know that because she worked somewhere like that she might have to see a lot of people before she meets the one that she wants to settle down with. But I tried to put myself across as being someone who was serious, not just someone who was there for a vacation, going to leave again. I didn't want to come across like that because that's not what I was interested in. I was interested in a meaningful relationship. I didn't know anything about Thailand. She told me where she was from, but I didn't pay close attention to that. We will get to that later. And she told me that she had a child, but she most definitely wouldn't get back together with her ex. She told me she'd been in Pattaya for about 2 years. As was the case with my Filipina girlfriend, she sent money to help her family and look after her kid. And she visited when she could, yet it wasn't as often as she would have liked. I felt very sorry for her when she said that. I couldn't imagine what it would have been like to have to work away from your child for months at a time without seeing them. But she said it was just how it was, and she was happy with it. She was just happy to be able to support her family. I felt myself getting carried away with this girl very quickly. And all I started to think about was perhaps trying to see if she would be interested in getting into a relationship with me. I really hope you appreciate me telling you how I felt at the time, even though, when I look back, I realize that I couldn't have been more wrong. But you have to understand that there are so many guys out there who still think like this. Guys like me who spent the first 55 years of their life without any female companionship. Yet that's all I ever wanted. It's easy to laugh at people like me and call me a fool. I'll say I should have known. But I don't really think criticism like that helps. I think by telling my story, most people are probably going to look at me and laugh. And yet, I am comfortable on my own to understand and ignore that and focus on the guys who may still be able to be helped. Yes, I found myself saying that same thing quite a few times, only for the fact I'm trying to protect myself before the ridicule. But I sat with her for quite a few hours, ordering drinks. I found it was slightly more expensive than the Philippines, and the beer wasn't quite as nice. I wasn't yet aware that they had San Miguel Light in Thailand as well. But when I asked her to go and have dinner with me, the sheer amount of choices of wonderful food in Thailand made the food in the Philippines not quite as appealing anymore. We went out for a meal, and we're talking and having a good time. I'm not thinking about that evening. I'm not thinking about the next week. I'm thinking about my future. Desperation really does make people do silly things, even if they don't know what they're doing is silly. Can anybody honestly say that I would have done what I did if I knew what I was doing was stupid? Do you really think I would have done what I did if I didn't honestly believe that people went to places like that to meet people? People like me who had no success meeting anybody anywhere else. I thought that's what the bars were for. The girls that worked in the bars, I was aware that they needed to make money, but I thought it was their dream to meet someone and settle down. I always saw it like that. I didn't see anything different, so it's very difficult for me to understand when people criticize because they say I should have known, but I say, how? After we finished dinner, we went for a few drinks somewhere else, and I really did like her. I completely stopped thinking about my ex from the Philippines, and we did get a little bit drunk, and she became my second girlfriend. I only allowed that to happen because I was serious with her. At least I intended to be serious with her, and the next day I asked her if she would like to go anywhere in Thailand with me. She just said, up to you. I quickly learned that while my girlfriend for the Philippines was more open to giving suggestions and advice on what to do, this girl that I met was more keen on me taking the lead, so I paid close attention to that and made sure that I would always bring things up, like let's do this and let's do that, so I said fine. I want to go to Bangkok, are you coming with me? It took a lot of courage for me to say that, because I was never a forward person. I was always shy, as I think is quite apparent by what I've said so far, and she said yes, I'll go with you. And not long after, we'd probably been in Bangkok for 3 days, I had fallen in love with her. She was a breath of fresh air, a lot more easygoing than the girlfriend I had in the Philippines, and she was equally just my type. I thought there was no way a girl like this would stay working in the bar much longer. I was sure that somebody else would meet her and fall in love with her and marry her, so I thought that I really needed to make my mind up quickly if I wanted to get serious. I'm having these thoughts. I also understand that she can have thoughts as well. So as much as I might have wanted to be with her, it wasn't like I wanted to be with her and her opinions didn't matter. I only wanted things to work if she was okay with that. I wanted her to want to be with me as well. So when I said to her, I am so happy I've met you. I think you're the best girl I've ever met. I'd like to spend more time with you and be more serious with you. How would you feel about that? When she answered that sounds good, I would love to spend more time with you, I took that as her having real feelings towards me. Perhaps she didn't love me yet, but we were on the path there, so I was very happy with her answer. Of course, I had to help her out financially because she wasn't working anymore, but that's what I always wanted a relationship to be. The man works and pays for things, and the girl stays at home and looks after the house and raises the kids. Yet I didn't expect to have children with her, but I thought of being able to make it possible for her to live with her kid. I thought that would make her really happy. She did say that we would need to go back to Pattaya because she had some of her things in the bar, and she also rented a small room. She called it a room, with 3 girls that worked there as well, where they kept some things and spent time when they weren't working. I liked Bangkok, and that's where I wanted to spend time, so I told her it was fine with me. We went down to Pattaya, spent the night there and gathered her things, went to speak to her friends in the bar, and they're all saying to me, "You've got to take care of her, she's a good one." They even said, "You're the first person who's ever wanted to spend more time with her. Make sure you treat her right." Maybe that's just a thing they would say to anybody, but I felt like the bar had done its job of bringing the both of us together. Now it was my job to make sure she was happy, taken care of, and in a position where she felt comfortable and content. All I wanted in return was love and affection. Imagine that. All I wanted was to be loved and for the person that loved me to be affectionate. That's all I wanted. And yes, I'd never had that before. Maybe I was living in my own dream world. Maybe I did make stupid choices. Maybe I was delusional to think the way I did. But at that moment, I can safely say that I was happier with her than I was with my Filipina girlfriend. She seemed to be so much easier to be around. We returned to Bangkok, and I was quite sure that I wanted to stay in Thailand, so I arranged for a retirement visa, which would allow me to stay in the country. I rented a small condo, and we lived together from very early on. We did everything together. We would wake up and go to eat breakfast. We may then go to the mall for a walk around before doing some shopping. Lunch, dinner, bed. Everything was done together, and after living like that for a month, I was already madly in love with her. This is the last time I'm going to say I thought what I was doing was real. I thought that the difference in age didn't matter because she said it didn't. I thought all she wanted to do was find someone who would look after her and give her a better life. I didn't think anything other than that. And the reason I want to keep mentioning this is because I know what people are going to say. I know what people are going to say before they've even said it. And while I may agree with what you have to say, for example, me being a very stupid person who had absolutely no idea what he was doing, at the same time, I didn't know, so please cut me some slack. I'm going to be reading the comments, of course I am, and it does worry me to think about what people will say, even though it's not like you know who I am. So, I don't think it matters too much. As every day went by, I became more and more happy. She never seemed unhappy. She was always smiling, always happy, and she never asked for money. I agreed to give her some, to help her and her family, but she never came with an emergency or anything. She just seemed to be happy with what I was giving her. And she was everything I wanted in a girl. 2 months later, I asked her to marry me, and she agreed. And she told her family, and they seemed to be happy, so we went up to meet them. This was the first time I'd heard of the tradition in Thailand where the would-be husband had to give money to the would-be wife's family. It happens on the day of the ceremony where money is shown to all the guests. I really respected that, and that's how they did things. But I must admit, I did do a little bit of research to make sure it was actually a real thing. I wasn't looking for people who said, "Don't do this, it's stupid, you shouldn't do it anymore." I was just looking for factual information as to whether this thing was real, and it was quite clear that it was. It was about $15,000 that I agreed to give the family. It didn't seem like a lot at the time. In the Thai baht, I'm not really sure because I haven't been to Thailand for a while, and I was never really someone who liked Thailand apart from the fact it gave me a relationship, or at least I thought it did. I didn't have to pay that straight away. That would be on the day we married. And before we even did that, we'd get married at the office in Bangkok. And that's what we did. We had the paper. I was actually married to her. I'd been with her for 3 months. She'd agreed to marry me, and now we were legally married. That was the best day of my life. 56 years I'd waited. Not because I wanted to wait, but because I never found anybody. but I was finally married. I loved her unconditionally. She was everything that I'd ever wanted my wife to be, and I believed that she loved me equally. I was 56 when we married, and she was 23. She had just turned 23, and if I look back, I have to grimace to think about I had no idea what I was really doing. That's the thing. I thought I knew what I was doing, and I thought this was perfectly normal and acceptable. I mean, I went up to where she was from, this village, beautiful little place, so scenic and nice, and it was those feelings that made things worse. But her family welcomed me, and they smiled at me. There was no indication that they were upset that I was a lot older than their daughter. They didn't even look like that. All she needed to do was tell me, "You're too old for me. I'm only doing this for the money. I'm only doing this because I want to get something out of it." And her parents could have told me, "We're only accepting this because we're going to get something out of it." They could have told me. And that is the real thing. If they told me the truth, I would have gladly paid for the truth. I would have paid them money if they told me what the truth was, just to save me from the heartache of falling further in love with this girl. Yet, they didn't tell me, and that didn't happen. If you heard what happened to me in the Philippines, you know I started out with $400,000 for my retirement, as well as a small $600 a month that I was receiving indefinitely because of something that happened to me quite a long time ago. I'd already lost $60,000 by building the house in the Philippines, yet at the time, as I'd already stated, the fact I lost $60,000 was completely overshadowed by the fact that I lost my girlfriend, which at the time was far more important to me. I didn't even know she did it on purpose. Up to then, I probably spent another $40,000 on top of that on general day-to-day living, traveling and investing in what I thought was my future with a real partner who loved me. So I didn't think I was blowing money. I didn't think I was throwing money away. As I said, it was an investment for my future and my future wife's future. Now, my real life, because we literally got married and she got married to me. Who gets married to someone for money? Of course, that might be something to it, but surely if money was her true motive and there was no love for me whatsoever, she could have told me and saved me a lot of money, and I could have given her some just to move on and try to find somebody else. But because I thought it was real, that's not what happened. What I'm trying to say is that I had about $300,000 left, as well as my small $600 a month. After we got married, I was the happiest I'd ever been, yet again. I keep saying it was the best day of my life because my life kept getting better, or at least I thought. A lot of those days over the course of a very short amount of time just continued to get better. You really need to understand this from the perspective of someone who had zero luck, nothing whatsoever until I was 55 in terms of female companionship. So you could forgive me for having these warped opinions. I never thought it was because I was ugly or anything. I'm not fat. I'm not the most good-looking person. But it was more to do with having no confidence, no presence. And it didn't matter because I couldn't do it. We went for our honeymoon a few days after. I'd already helped her arrange a passport because I wanted to take her out of Thailand for the first time. She'd never left Thailand before, and she was very happy to be able to go somewhere. I really wanted to ask her where she wanted to go, but because I felt like I knew her very well and she wanted me to take the lead, I knew she talked about hoping to be able to visit Japan, so that's where I took her. I didn't tell her where we were going until we got to the airport, and she seemed to be very happy to be able to go to Japan. She hugged me and said, "Thank you, I'm happy." There was nothing to indicate it wasn't real. I'd never been to Japan before. The only places I'd been, 55 years not leaving America, 6 months in the Philippines or just over, and a few months in Thailand, and that was it. So to be able to experience Japan with her for both our first times was great. I did feel a bit conspicuous in Japan, walking around the streets with her, based on our age difference. In Thailand, it just felt normal and acceptable in how things were done. I did see in Thailand, on quite a lot of occasions, older Thai guys with younger Thai girls. It just seemed to be part of their culture and how they did things, and it felt so normal. Yet in Japan, I felt a bit weird. Although my wife told me not to worry about it, we love each other and that's all that matters. And that's the thing. She's saying all the right things. She's saying exactly what I want to hear. What any guy who had been with someone they love unconditionally wanted to hear. And that's the thing. She's saying all the right things. She's saying exactly what I want to hear. What guy who has been with someone that they love unconditionally, and that person that they love unconditionally is telling them that they love them too? Why would I not think it was true? We have it so difficult as men, especially men like me. But aside from that little bit uncomfortable feeling, it was a fantastic vacation. A whole week in Tokyo. I took her everywhere that I would imagine she wanted to go, and she did say she had a fantastic time and she was very grateful to have been. We then returned to Thailand and went up to her village, where we had the full wedding ceremony. The whole village came, and that's when I presented approximately $15,000, and I was very proud to be able to do that. Proud to show that I was financially capable of supporting such a wonderful girl. The ceremony came and went, and by now I've seen her kid a few times, and she was always happy when she could see her kid. I said to her, wouldn't you like to bring your kid down to Bangkok and he can live with us? But she said she thinks it's better for her kid to stay in the village, best for the family support, and she felt like she wouldn't want to take her son away from there and put him into a school in Bangkok. I wasn't going to push that, and that was okay for me, so after we had the ceremony we returned to Bangkok and just started getting on with our married life. For the first month or so it was everything I thought it would be. In fact, it was better than everything I thought it would be. But I felt like we were living, and the things we were doing felt temporary. Living in a very small condo, there's not much personal space. It's not an area where I can go and do something and an area where she can go and do something. You're always on top of each other, and it felt more like living in a hotel than in an actual home. I wanted a house. I wanted a proper life, a proper retirement. And it was me. She didn't even ask once. It was me who said to her, how would you feel if we went to live in your village, in a house if we built one? We lived there instead of Bangkok. I need to say that again. It was 100% my idea. Even though that's the case, and I may be perceived as being an even bigger idiot than you thought already, you have to remember that when my relationship in the Philippines broke down, I didn't see the fact that I lost $60,000 to her as me losing $60,000 to her. I saw it as she was in love with me, but she had to do what was right for her kids by staying with her ex. And it just so happened that I lost $60,000 because of it. When I raised this with her and asked what she would feel about it, she just said, it sounds good. Does that sound like a good idea? I said again just to confirm, and she said yes. I told her how difficult it was for me to live in such a small place, and how Bangkok was starting to take its toll on me because it was so busy, and how I wanted to live in a more peaceful location. We talked about it for a bit, talked about roughly how much things would cost, what the house would be like, what we would do when we were there, and she just said, if you're sure, she'd really love to do that. So that's what we did. Of course, that was everything she wanted, if I think about it now. But she got someone to build her a house, i.e. me, without even having to ask. I said I wanted to do that, and words failed me as to who I was. I don't recognize my old self. I look at myself how I was, and I think just how desperate I was. I mean, that's the only way to describe it. I was desperate, and I suppose as a way to try to justify the fact that my wife was more than 2 times younger than me. It was as if I missed out on that when I was that age, so I was just trying to have what I missed out on earlier in life. I wasn't even trying to justify it with myself. I just thought it was how things worked there. I thought it was normal. But how I think and how I feel now doesn't really matter. But after we talked about building the house, we went back up to her village. It was in northeast Thailand, which seems to be the place that many people go to build houses. It's known as Isan in Thailand, and that part of the country I found to be beautiful. We arrived there late one evening. We were already married and her family graciously welcomed us into the house, and we were able to stay there. and the following morning we were already looking at places to build. I didn't for 1 second stop to think that I had just done this not very long ago in the Philippines and it all went wrong. I still thought that was just down to the fact that my girlfriend in the Philippines had to make a hard decision, which involved not staying with me. I thought she wanted to stay with me, but she had to do what was best for her kids, and the fact that I built a house and she ended up with it, I didn't even think that that was her intention. Almost immediately, someone in her family, I don't know who it was, an aunt or an uncle or somebody like that, said they had some land and they didn't want much money for it. I think it was $5,000, and my wife said it was great. A perfect location, she said, and how was I to know otherwise? She was from there, so if she said it was perfect, that's good enough for me. That's all I needed to hear. I wanted to solidify what I had with her, and I thought by building a house, that would really solidify how she felt about me. I thought she would love and respect me even more than she already did, and I thought at the time she loved me so much already. So I didn't even try to negotiate, and I agreed to buy the land, which we put on my wife's name over the course of the next week. It was very easy, and all of a sudden it started to feel very real. I'd agreed to spend $100,000 for everything, the land and the house, and I gave her the money so she could sort it out. I wanted her to have control over it because it was her country, her village, and it would give her the feeling like she was an equal to me. I always considered her to be my equal. I never thought that, oh, you're from Thailand, you're not the same as me. I trusted her and loved her unconditionally. That's the only word I can use. But over the course of the next 6 months, which at the time we were living in a very small makeshift extension we made to her mother and father's house that only took a few days to build. But 6 months later, the house was ready. We got all the way to completion. The next was looking for things to put in the house and designing it the way we wanted. But I left everything up to her. I wanted her to have her dream house. I wanted it to be the way she had always pictured a house that she would live in. So all in, it was about $120,000, which I didn't think was too bad. I also bought a car for $30,000, and then I felt like I was just ready to finally start living. When the house was built and we moved in, I thought that's the best thing ever. I thought I was going to remain there for the rest of my life. I've since heard people talking about how different life is in the village, how people do things differently, yet I didn't care what people did. As long as I was with my wife, that's all that mattered, and I was more than happy to be able to have her kid moving into the house, so that she could have him there and he could have a better upbringing. I wanted to do everything right, and over the first year of living in the house, I thought things were going great. I mean, they were. At least that's how I saw them. The fact that I'd spent a lot of money didn't concern me. I had $600 a month coming in, and I only needed to spend $1,500 a month, and that included the money I gave to my wife for her daily needs and family support. So I had more than enough money at the time to last me a long time. Then, of course, there will be more money coming in eventually when I receive Social Security, but I didn't really know how much that was going to be. After the first year of being there, everything seemed like it would last forever. I had approximately $140,000 in the bank. I wasn't too many years away from getting more money for retirement, and my $600 a month was permanent. I was happy. It's amazing how we can go from being so happy to watch your world come crashing down in a very short space of time. Again. While my Philippines girlfriend, who cheated on me in the house I was building with the father of her children, and even though she did that, I thought she was doing it for the benefit of her children and their future, as opposed to because she didn't want to stay with me. I thought she was sacrificing her for them. But when I found out that my wife, who I was madly in love with, was cheating on me with a guy in the village, that's when my mind started to change. We were at a wedding in the village. They happen from time to time, as they do everywhere, and I was having a few drinks. My wife was getting quite drunk, as was everybody. They're celebrating this marriage. Yet when I was sat at a table just keeping myself to myself, occasionally people would come over and clink glasses with me as people did. They were very friendly. I noticed my wife was dancing with lots of other people next to the stage where they had a band playing. yet she seems to be very close with one of the guys there. He's got his arms touching her in places that perhaps he shouldn't have. I didn't know people did that in Thailand out in the open, but I suppose they were drunk. I didn't think much of it, but something stuck in my mind that it wasn't normal behaviour for your wife to do that. And it was because of that I started, for the first time since I left America, to think about the bigger picture. I wasn't too concerned, but it did make me think. It was then a question of seeing if what she was doing, dancing here at the wedding, was just an innocent thing, or was she doing something more than that, because she seemed to be really friendly with that guy. It didn't take me long to find out, and when I did find out, I realised that everything I'd done in the Philippines and in Thailand was basically down to desperation. I overlooked what I was doing. I didn't think what I was doing was strange or not normal. I thought it was what you did in that part of the world. Yet when I found out that she was cheating, even though I built a house and bought a car and I supported her and her family, even after all that, she still cheated on me. That was when I understood I'd been living in some kind of fantasy world that didn't really exist. When I confronted her, she just said, "Sorry, I was drunk." This was twice that something like this has happened to me. First time, I was prepared to overlook it as an innocent mistake, a mother wanting to do best for her kids. But this time there was no excuse. She begged and said she was sorry she wouldn't do it again, and I overlooked it. And a month later, it turned out she was pregnant, and that was when I completely lost it. I'd never really been angry in my life to that extent before, but that was the first time when I let out all the emotions that I'd let build up over the course of my life. All the feelings of inadequacy, all the feelings of not getting what I thought I should have had like everybody else did. I let it out all at once, and there was no going back from that. My eyes were opened to what the world was really like. But more importantly, my eyes were opened to the situation that I was in. A girl less than half my age, who I thought up until that point loved me more than life itself. Perhaps she loved her kid more, I get that, but I thought I came in a very close second. When I realised that it was all a facade and that she was doing this and I was basically her job, when I found that out, all I could think about doing was getting out of there as quickly as I could. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm not looking to try to justify anything that I did. But what happened to me was because I was so desperate to have love and affection that I went to both the Philippines and Thailand to try to find it. I thought I found it twice, yet I didn't realise that these girls weren't interested in me. I thought they loved me. Some people may ridicule me because of that, because I should have known. Why would a 23-year-old beautiful girl want a 56-year-old man to look after them, to build them a house, to buy them a car, to make sure that they can live a decent life? Yet all they have to do in return is not cheat. And when she did, that was it. I don't get what the problem is. But it was a big problem. Looking back, of course, I should have known that someone in their 20s wouldn't want someone like me for anything other than financial benefit. But I didn't know. All I wanted was happiness and love. It was a very difficult lesson, and it was a hard lesson learned. $300,000 lost at this point, and I'd already fallen out of love with the Philippines. I'd already hated Thailand, and I don't have enough money to return home and retire there. So the question is, what do I do now? I found myself in Bangkok, still married, and she didn't even try to call me, not once. I left and that was it. I never heard from her again. I didn't want to be in Thailand anymore, and I most definitely didn't want to go back to the Philippines. So I started looking at the map, and the closest place was Cambodia. So I went there. Boarding the flight from Bangkok to Siem Reap, I couldn't believe that I found myself in such a bad position. Over the previous few years, everything went wrong for me in the Philippines. My girlfriend wanted to leave me just after we finished building a house. And at the time, I thought that even though she wanted to leave me, it was because she wanted to do what was best for her kids. I didn't realise that she scammed me out of the money to build the house. I left to Thailand, still with the same understanding that all I needed to do was meet the right person in the right bar. I was still thinking that was where you were meant to meet people. At least the guys like me who hadn't had any luck in his life anywhere else. Everything went wrong in Thailand. I even got married. And things lasted slightly longer, over a year, but it became clear that she had no interest in me either. I built a house, bought a car, and then I found out she was cheating on me with somebody in the village. That was when I understood that everything I'd done was wrong. Before, I was so convinced that a bar was a place where two people would meet. A guy like me who didn't have any luck in any other place to find someone, and a girl who also couldn't find the type of person she wanted anywhere else. While she worked there and had to make money, I thought her dream was to get out as quick as she could. I also didn't realise that such a big age difference between myself and a girl I was getting into a relationship, I didn't realise it was a problem. I was advised that by the girls, and I just thought, in this part of the world, that's how things were meant to be done. I'd realised by now that this wasn't the case, that I'd actually been taken advantage of and downright scammed in the Philippines. Perhaps in Thailand it wasn't an out-and-out scam, yet she still never loved me or wanted me for me. I know I now needed to do what was best for myself. I started with $400,000, and I probably had $80,000 left. I still had my $600 a month as income, which I'd always had. Cambodia seemed like the place that was best for me to go. Very easy to get a visa to stay there, very cheap if you wanted it to be, and the last place I wanted to go was back home to the States because I wouldn't have enough money to be able to afford retirement there. When I arrived in Siem Reap, the pain that I felt from no longer being with my wife, although it was extremely bad, it did start to ease as I looked at this being a new start. I wasn't going to meet anybody that wasn't at least 45 years old. That was the first thing that I needed to understand. Secondly, while I was still open to the possibility of meeting a girl in a bar, I would never build a house or buy anything in her name or give her anything over and above what was necessary for her to live. I thought if I stuck to those rules, I should be okay. Siem Reap was just what I needed. Something to take my mind off everything that had happened, and a place where I could come to terms with the fact that I wouldn't have as much money as I thought I would in retirement. I knew after the $80,000 had gone that $600 a month would just allow me to survive in Cambodia without much hardship. So I had to make sure that $80,000 counted. I stayed in a hotel close to Pub Street. It seemed to be very popular with tourists. Angkor Wat wasn't far away. I did plan to go, but I never got round to it. I just spent 2 weeks relaxing in my hotel, going for a swim in the pool when I could, and going for drinks in the evenings to Pub Street. While I liked it there, I found that the majority of the tourists seemed to be a lot younger than me. There were guys like me, but most of the people seemed to be there for the cultural experience, while I was there to hopefully stay permanently. I'd got a 30-day business visa for Cambodia, which I knew I could extend for a small payment without any requirements to do anything else. That made me comfortable knowing that I wouldn't have to meet certain requirements later on that I would not be able to meet. If all I needed to do was spend a few $100s and I get the visa, that was one less thing to worry about. After 2 weeks, I decided that while I liked Siem Reap, I didn't feel like I would want to live there. I suppose I could have done, but I wanted to see more of the country while I still had some money left. I thought I would go to Phnom Penh, but I decided to go to the beach area first, the little town of Sihanoukville. I liked the idea of living somewhere close to the beach because that would provide me with a lot of free entertainment. And when I got there, I had mixed feelings. On the one hand, it seemed very quaint. It seemed like it had been a grand destination in the past. On the other hand, it was very run down, but you could tell that what was going on around would propel it into a more developed place. I had some fun in some of the bars there, without thinking that I needed to find a relationship straight away. I wished that I had have known. I would have done that before. I didn't know, though, what I was doing before was wrong. But it takes making mistakes by yourself, a few times even, for your perspectives to change and for you to start to understand exactly what things are about. Being able to enjoy the bars with that understanding was good, and I can only imagine what it would have been like if I'd done that in the Philippines and Thailand, instead of rushing into relationships because that's what I'd always wanted, because I'd never had one. I spent 2 weeks there, a nice hotel with the pool, spending time at the beach, and I loved the little bars next to the beach where you'd just go for drinks. The drinks were very cheap. On $600 a month, I thought I would be able to have a few beers from time to time. I would be getting something from Social Security at some point, but I had to think about that as coming later. $600 a month, though. I should be able to find a cheap place to live, and I could even go out for a few drinks every now and then. When the 2 weeks there was up, I was starting to feel a lot better. I'd completely forgotten about my Filipina girlfriend who had scammed me, and while I still thought often about my wife in Thailand who I loved dearly, I was starting to think about the future as opposed to the past. I was now starting to think about all the money I'd lost as opposed to the relationships I'd lost, and it did make me very angry when I thought about how much I'd lost. I was liking Cambodia. Some parts of it I didn't like as much as I liked certain parts of Thailand or the Philippines, but some parts I liked more. I wondered what a combination of all three countries would be like, if that was possible to achieve. I think that would be the best country in the world. What I should have done, and what I thought about if I'd just taken care of myself and tried to save what I have, I could have spent time in different countries as and when I pleased. But I knew that I would probably never leave Cambodia again if my money didn't allow. From then, it's when I went to Phnom Penh. Smaller than Bangkok and Manila, less in your face, a great history, cheap beer, nice food. And it was only after being there for a day or two that I decided that Phnom Penh is where I would try to live. I could always go to the beach when I wanted a break if my money allowed. But Phnom Penh was the perfect place for me to try to start rebuilding my life. I stayed in a reasonable hotel close to the Olympic Stadium. Stayed there for a few weeks, and in the meantime, I got my extension on the visa, which gave me a whole year in the country. I was told that should last indefinitely, so that was good. After that, I started looking for somewhere to rent more long term, and I knew it would have to be a very cheap place. I found a room at the top of a 4-story building. It was basic. It had its own bathroom. Aside from that, there was a bed and a fridge. Didn't have a TV, so I had to buy one. It also had a chair and a small table, yet the closet was more of a place to hang clothes out in the open, and I just resigned myself to the fact that I would have to live somewhere like this. It didn't even have air conditioning, but I learned to get used to that. It cost me $140 a month, and with the other things on top, I was spending a total of $180 a month on accommodation. When I'd arranged that, I tried to build a new life that would allow me to live within my means. I'd spent some of the $80,000 I had left, that was staying at hotels and enjoying myself in Cambodia to start with and getting to know the country. I always thought that would be there for an emergency, and I didn't really plan to spend it. But even if I just ate into it by $100 a month, if I needed a bit extra, or even $200 a month, then, it would stretch a long way. I found myself usually, over the next few months, waking up quite early and going out for an early morning walk, between 6:30 and 7. I'd then return to my room, have a shower, and then I'd go to a cafe close by. I was able to find cheap locations, cheaper than the ones in what were already coming very popular tourist areas. But I was finding I was able to have a reasonable coffee for between 50 cents and $1. While having my coffee, I would read the local Phnom Penh Post. That would kill a few hours, and then I'd go back to my room and spend a little bit of time there before going for lunch. I usually went to a little market close by and had some noodles or another cheap dish. I didn't usually spend more than $1 to $2 on lunch every day, and that included water as well. I might then go for another cafe for a few hours and read some more, have another coffee, and then I'd return to my room before going out to eat dinner. I never usually spent more than $3 on dinner, and some days I would go for 2 or 3 beers in either a local place to save a bit of money, or occasionally to the tourist areas and I would spend a bit more. Over the first 3 months of living there, I was keeping to a $600 a month budget. The only thing that I struggled with was not being able to just go and buy the type of food I wanted to when I wanted to. Once a month, I did treat myself to my favourite restaurant, and even still, it wasn't expensive. But compared to everything else I was spending, it was a big chunk of my budget. But the reason I wanted to live like that for 3 months was to confirm that it was possible, and it was. And while I'd spoken to some Cambodian girls, I wasn't rushing to find someone like I was before. I wish I'd taken my time in the Philippines and in Thailand. I bet if I'd taken my time in the Philippines and done everything properly, I would have still been there today. If I'd learned my lessons in the Philippines, I wouldn't have done what I did in Thailand. I would have probably had a better go in Thailand and still have been there. But I wasn't going to let anything happen that would take me away from Cambodia. One thing that I had to accept was that I wasn't able to afford any insurance, so that was a gamble I had to take. However, I would say that when my social security came, that was enough to cover insurance. After those 3 months, I started to mix a little bit more with other people. Not as much as lots of people do, but I did try to make some friends. However, I was never really very successful with that. But it was around that time that I met a Cambodian girl. She was 48 years old, and I will admit that she worked in a bar when I met her. She already had grown-up kids. She was no longer with her husband, but she seemed to be a bit different. She was there because she didn't really have anything else to do. She did seem to be quite desperate, but it was quite apparent that she was different to the younger girls. I did find out that the younger girls seemed to be more interested in making money more than starting a family with someone. Yet, because she was older, she seemed to want nothing more than to be able to stop working there, and that's what happened. She told me that her kids used to help her with a little bit of money every month, but they had to stop giving her money because they were having their own problems, so that's why she went to work in the bar. I saw her a few times in the bar and out of the bar, yet I wasn't rushing anymore. I wanted to make sure I was doing the right thing. But she was the one making all the moves this time, whereas before it was me who was desperate to try to tie the girls down. After 2 months, she'd moved in with me, and it was very strange to be living with somebody again, but in a position so different to the positions I was in before. I felt more like this relationship was real with her. Before, I thought the relationships I was having was real, but I guess I wanted these relationships to be real because the girls who I was with were everything I'd always ever wanted when I was younger that I couldn't have. But with this Cambodian girl, she was still younger than me, but she was the type of person I should have tried to look for to begin with, instead of caring too much about appearance and trying to get something I thought I deserved. We spent 6 months together, and we never fought with each other. It was like we both needed each other, and I really wanted to marry her, but I was still married to that girl in Thailand. And I didn't know what to do about that. And then I found out I probably wasn't eligible to get married in Cambodia because I didn't make enough money. So we never did marry. After 6 months, we both thought that we were the best that either of us could have. And it was never really was any kind of lustful relationship. It has been one that has allowed me to have the companionship I've always wanted, and for her to be able to live in a more dignified way. As time has passed, I've come to accept everything that happened to me as bringing me to where I am today. I started to do little bits of online work. I did that for a few years. Making an extra few $100s goes a long way in Cambodia. It's not possible to live the same life that I was living when I arrived on $600 anymore. We need closer to $1,000 to be able to live together. We do have a little bit nicer place than we used to. My money, while it has continued to go down, I have stuck to an extremely rigid budget. The budget is set out at the start of the month. All the bills that need paying are paid. And if there is anything left over when we worked out how much we're going to spend on food that month, then we can save that little bit. And after however long it takes, we might go away for a few days for a treat. I find myself quite happy and content now. It took a lot for me to get here. It's not the retirement I ever thought I'd have, but it is the next best thing, considering I've been lucky enough to have been living in a great country, on a small amount of money, with a great girl who is the sort of girl I should have tried to find to begin with. Thank you for letting me share my story. It's been an exciting journey. The ups and the downs have been difficult. Let's just leave it at that. Difficult.